What's the most unexpected compliment you've ever received? And what compliments have they given you? Write in the comments what you think. Enjoy the show. Story 1. I'm a dog walker and had a pack of 5 out and about. A sweet little old lady stopped me and gestured to the ungodly amount of poo bags in my hand and thanked me for tidying up. She said not many people on her street clean up after their dogs, so she was so grateful to see that somebody was. Then she said, "You have a lovely day even though it's hotter than Satan's tits." Made my day. Story 2. My wife, who is much more generous than me, was giving a homeless man some money at a stoplight, and he looked in the car and said, "I looked like Brad Pitt." I think it was the beanie and lack of shaving more than the once upon a time in Hollywood rooftop maintenance. So it's rude, but I'm literally a homeless man's Brad Pitt. Story 3. I half-heartedly applied for a job at the place my then-boyfriend was working. They were for an industrial chemical supplier, and it was a very physical job. The interview and application consisted partly of a 90-question timed exam, going over some rudimentary physics and mechanics engineering, like pressure flows and complicated pulley systems, electrical currents, etc. I didn't get the job because I had a minor boo-boo on my record, the kind that gets expunged in 10 years. I was 2 months away from that 10-year date, and the interviewer was begging me to come back and reapply at that time because I had scored higher than any applicant they had ever had. I should note that I'm not in this industry. I will consider myself to be a person with only passing familiarity with physics and mechanical engineering. I did pay rapt attention to the way things work as a kid, and just imagine tiny little woolly mammoth on my exam page. Regardless, the interviewer went on to say that men are drawn to the job because of its nature, but historically, their top 5% of applicants are all women, and I was particularly notable. I was flattered, but did not reapply. Story 4. In high school, my friend and I were in a chamber choir that performed all over the state and had a lot of supporters. We were thrift shopping in my small town, and a man recognized us from one of our performances the week prior. He told the cashiers, "These two have the voice of an angel. You've got to see one of their concerts." And we nearly cried, lowly. In a similar vein, the chamber choir once did a concert with a community choir, and I had a solo in one of our songs. After the performance, a man from the other choir came up to me with a pen and concert program and asked me to sign it because I'd like to have it before you become famous because you're going to be famous one day. And once again, I nearly cried. Story 5. You're beautiful. It was during a low point in my life, and I was standing next to my best friend who is like beautiful inside out. She's drop dead gorgeous. So when the girl said that to me, I thought she was talking to my friend, and she was like, "No, you." And it was just so sweet and unexpected because I don't really ever receive compliments like that. Story 6. I am a high school teacher. I had a very stylish kid who always was rocking expensive current fashions in one of my classes. I try to look nice, but have never been one to focus too much on my appearance or what I wear. One day he asked me where I had bought my shirt from. My initial thought was he was mocking me, so I kind of just gave a sarcastic reply back. He said, "No, I am serious. I really like it and want to get one." I still was kind of suspicious, but I told him. A couple of weeks later, he wore the shirt to school. For somebody who thought they didn't really care, I was riding that high for the rest of the day. A couple of months later, there was a twin day for Spirit Week, and I jokingly asked if he wanted to wear his shirt and twin with me. He said yes, and we both wore that shirt to school. He definitely pulled it off better than me. The kid just had a natural sense of style. Got some funny pictures, good times, good kid. Story 7. I did co-op in high school, work placement. They placed me in a kindergarten room, and NGTL, it was the best experience of my life, hands down. I was lucky to start my placement only about 3 weeks into their school year. So many kids were still figuring things out as I was. 2 of the new kids had autism, and 1 was completely nonverbal, other than at home. I spent a lot of time with her, and every time she smiled or laughed, it felt so good. It helped she was so adorable. I was only there 2 months, but by the end we got her talking. Very basic, yes or no type stuff. And when I was leaving, she thanked me. She just said thanks. Not exactly a compliment, but it's a moment I'll never forget for sure. TBC, the teachers I worked under were amazing. I never realized how much kindergarten teachers went though and did. This was also during COVID, which added a whole lot of mess. Granted, I don't have kids, but seriously, if I could give one tip for parents, it would be to find the best kindergarten you can. It's your kid's intro to life outside of your safety. Super important. Story 8. About 2 years ago, I entered a random pharmacy to buy something for my headache. I greet the lady working there, probably in her later 40s, and without greeting back, she says, "Good Lord, you're so handsome, like a Hollywood actor." I look around to check if she's talking to someone else, but there were no other people there. I thank her for the compliment, took the medicine, and walked home. I thought about the exchange on my way home, how nice it felt coming from a complete stranger, and without realizing a smile had taken shape in my lips. I had been smiling for 30 minutes without realizing. Strange how much a good word can impact our lives. Story 9. While playing for my college on the CS team, my team was in the pre-game lobby and I hadn't joined yet because I was making sure everything was in order on the tournament organizer's end. But I was in my captain's stream so I could see the trash talk. The other team was talking mad shit because we beat them 3-2 in the regular season. They basically said we were trash and got lucky and specifically name-dropped me saying I didn't deserve the spot on the team. Our captain saw that message and immediately said, "I need to send this to Sky. That psychopath is about to stomp these guys," to which my 3 other teammates agreed and laughed. I wasn't expecting it, and apparently I have earned the reputation of being competitively insane and going to a different level when people talk shit. I knew I was extremely competitive, probably to a fault, but to have my teammates realize that and know I was about to show out felt so good. I ended up going 31, 9, 24, 10 and 37, 16 in a 3-0 sweep, top fragging in every game. Other team didn't have much to say after the first game, but it was too late. Story 10. I have very light blue eyes. In high school, I was walking down the hall between classes, and a random girl I'd never met before or ever saw again looks at me and stops in place for a second. She says, "Holy crap, look at his eyes," or something of that sort to herself. Then we both just kept walking in opposite directions. IDKEY, but that stuck with me for like 20 years. Something about someone literally stopping in their tracks and then just moving on like it never happened was great. Story 11. Back when the 1975 still did meet and greets after shows, their security guard told me I was the nicest, most polite fan he'd seen all tour, and he wished everyone would treat the guys how I did. It actually kind of made me sad because I didn't even do anything crazy. I just asked permission before I hugged them, told them how much I enjoyed the show, and thanked them for standing out in the cold to say hi to all of us. And of course, thanked the security as well for braving the elements and keeping the band safe. I guess people forget celebrities are people who don't want to spend a 30-second encounter with a stranger being hypersexualized or trauma dumped on. Story 12. Fat my whole life. I got in good shape during college. A girl in class saw me walk out of the elevator and made a joke about how since I was skinny, I needed to use the stairs and the elevators were for fat people. She was larger and we were friends in a class, so not just a random statement by a stranger. Her comment completely shattered my self-perception. No matter how much weight I had lost, I still saw myself as the fat kid. Hearing someone who only knew me as a thin person call me skinny just twisted me up. Story 13. I was in Walmart after a bad day at work, and my mind was in the gutter. Was picking up cat supplies in that aisle, and a girl about 6 or 7 years old walked up and said, "I like your shoes." They were old Nike tennis shoes splattered with dirt and bits of dried chemicals from work. I said a meager thank you, but I teared up and wanted to give her a big hug. But of course, the optics of a crying 28-year-old guy giving a random little girl a hug would have looked weird in public. Story 14. While I was minding my own in a class, there was this girl across from me whose eyes I could feel on me, which made me feel super self-conscious at the time because I thought I was an unpleasant sight to behold. I wanted her to look elsewhere without directly telling her that, so I just stared back at her. Then she blurted, "I like your eyes. They're big and cute." We both cracked a smile before bursting out in laughter. It turned into a funny moment with how abrupt the compliment was. Story 15. When I was in high school, there was this bully, popular boy who was rude to my whole friend group. On the last day of school, he had our whole class stand in a line so he could tell us all individually what he hated about us. He said really rude things like, "You're ugly" or "You're a whore." But when he got to me, all he said was, "You're actually quite beautiful." I never saw him again after that day. Story 16. When I was at work, there were a father and daughter that I was helping. The daughter had to have been around 6 or 7. I helped the dad find what he needed and sent them on their way. As they were walking away, the daughter turned around and said quietly, "Bonita, I have tattoos and piercings and normally kids don't know what to make of it or are scared of me. Normally they are brutally honest about the way people look." Her saying that was very unexpected and wholesome and a moment I hold dear to me today. Story 17. My favorite. People like to be around you because you make them want to smile. Not the fake kind. You make them want to be as happy and bright as you are. I struggle seriously with depression. but I've always fought not to lose those moments of just simple childish joy, and it made me happy that as much as I've lived, it hasn't gone from me yet. The most unexpected? My God, you're a porcelain doll! There's a woman who wears all white, usually long dresses, and stands near the grocery store in a town I used to work. I'd walk to the grocery store often, and she was always out there. I assumed she was unhoused or mentally ill or something, but her clothes were always bright, clean white. I never gave her money because I didn't want to presume anything and because she never asked. But she asked me for the time once, after I'd passed 1,000,000 times and smiled at her. One day she stopped me, like she'd just realized that she knew me from somewhere, recognized me suddenly, and with the same tone I've been asked if I was so-and-so's daughter, informed me I was a porcelain doll. I've been told I look like Drew Barrymore from 50 First Dates 1,000,000 times, once that I looked like an album cover, drunk old men at the bar, and most recently, Daphne from Scooby-Doo. She clarified that she didn't mean the style, just the face. Story 18. Very not obvious and hardly a compliment, but I remembered it for life. It was back in high school. I was sitting near an open window, and when I got cold, I asked a boy behind me to close it. To make a long story short, he and I always argued about the window because he was hot and I was cold. And then he said, "Look at your pretty jacket hanging on the chair. I'm sure you'll be warm in it." I'll never forget it, Andrew. Story 19. When I moved halfway across the world, I had a farewell goodbye party with my friends, and they composed a book album with all kinds of pictures and notes in there. One of the notes said, "You are the only person I know who, every time they ask, 'How are you?' really genuinely wants to know how someone is doing, and will listen to whatever the person wants to say and talk about. It's the nicest thing anyone has ever said about me, and while that statement is true, or at least I try to, I vowed that I would always keep that goal/mentality. Moving to a country where 'How are you?' is just a standard greeting has made it harder to get genuine responses, but I always offer. Story 20. My husband hosts a trivia night occasionally at a local bar. A group of women were talking about my husband and how hot he is. One of them said, "I'm gonna go talk to him, I have to at least try." And this older woman who was with them pointed at me and said, "He's taken. Look at her. She looks like a doll. You don't stand a chance." And I was so flattered. Story 21. Getting off the train a few years ago, I notice a guy looking at me for a bit, then approaching and asks, "Are you a celebrity? Been in the paper recently? Where do I know you from?" After assuring him I'm just a regular random nobody, he said something like, "Well, you sure do look like one." As someone who can't take a compliment and with next to no self-esteem, this made my day, and I think about it at least monthly. Probably the nicest and also most random thing a stranger has said to me. Story 22. A few years ago at another job I worked at, a very cute girl who worked in the HR department told me, "You have the prettiest eyes I've ever seen." I never forgot that. Then, a month or so ago, I was talking to a couple girls at my part-time job, both very attractive. I was talking about how dudes are in shape compared to my somewhat big size. One girl says, "Girls love the dad bod nowadays. You look good." I said, "No way, I may be past the limit." She responds, "The bigger the better. Apparently my fat ass is now an Adonis figure and my eyes are nice. So I guess you can say things are getting pretty serious." Story 23. My brother-in-law is a recovering heroin addict, 3 years sober and kicking ass with a great union job now. But there was a point he had stayed with my wife and I because he needed a roof over his head after getting out of jail from a relapse and had to wait 2 weeks for a spot to open up at a sober living halfway house sort of thing. He later told my wife that his body was screaming for a fix and that in the past he would usually steal money, things to pawn from family, and immediately go see a dealer. But even his active addiction, heroin-starved mind, could not come up with a single minor instance where he could justify that I or my wife had wronged him and allow him to rationalize that it was okay for him to steal from us. I love the dude, and I'm so proud of him for his mental fortitude during that time. Story 24. I don't remember getting any compliments except for one. I was besotted with this one woman that I think could have been one of the best relationships I was in. She was very funny, amorous, light-hearted, etc. Her sarcasm matched my sarcasm. We went for a walk and the sun was setting. We talked about astronomy a bit, moved on to a philosophical discussion. She paused and shyly looked at me to say, "You are amazing." There is possibility that it was her sarcasm, but it broke every wall that I had because it seemed so real. She ran off with someone else, but I never forgot that one compliment, because like I said, I don't ever get those. Story 25. My 7-year-old daughter told me that I make her feel safe. At first I thought it was no big deal because every kid should feel safe when they're with a parent. And then I realized how naive I was for making that assumption. And then it occurred to me that in order for her to make that distinction between me and someone else, is that she had felt unsafe in someone else's presence. I'm tearing up thinking about that right now. Story 26. First week of clinical rotations in medical school, our preceptor had us med students hit the ground running by telling us, "Go see the patient and come get me when you have a treatment plan." You have to understand that we're all freaking out a bit because we expected a bit more hand-holding on our first week. Later in the day, after coming out of a patient's room, one of the older nurses, whose name I had yet to learn, walks up to me and says, "Hey, you're one of the new medical students, right?" I say, "Yeah, I am. I just started this week. Can I help you with something?" "Nah, man. I just passed by the room while you were talking to the patient, and I just wanted to say, you're going to be an awesome doctor. You're one of the good ones." I don't think any other compliment I've received has ever made me feel more proud/competent. Story 27. At my last job, I was chatting with my assistant, just talking about our weekends or something like that. She had done something with her family the weekend before and said something to the effect of, "I was telling my sister how you look like Tom Holland." Besides being kinda short and slim, I absolutely do not look like Tom Holland. At least I don't see it, but he's a good-looking lad, so I'll take the compliment. Story 28. One of the most unexpected compliments I ever received was when someone told me I had a great voice for storytelling. I was just having a casual conversation, but they mentioned that my tone, pacing, and expressiveness would be perfect for narrating audiobooks or podcasts. It was completely out of the blue, and something I had never considered about myself before. It made me see a new potential in a skill I took for granted, and gave me a boost of confidence in a very unexpected way. Story 29. The third girl I ever had sex with told me, "Your penis is so comfortable." For some time, I wasn't sure if this was a compliment. At the time, I thought maybe she was trying to tell me that it's not specially big without hurting my feelings, but I was told by alleged women of Reddit that it most likely was indeed an honest compliment. So now I feel pretty good about it. My non-penis-related most unexpected compliment was when I was choosing a perfume. And as soon as I told the store lady the one I was going to take, she smiled and said, "I knew it! That one goes perfectly with your beard." I found it kinda weird, but I really like my beard, so I appreciated it. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments, and share your stories.